Hi, I'm Eva. Welcome to my new channel for things related to games, and let's talk ALC mechanics. Huge shout out to those who helped review my script and the video, Andrew aka Vynstein, Fome, and I'm extremely honored that the lead game designer Sylidar himself reviewed the video and made some suggestions. Thank you so much. But of course, if anything was missed or misrepresented, please leave it in the comments. Alchemical Revolution, or ALC, is the third ever set for Grand Archive TCG, released on January 26, 2024. It introduces 3 new champion classes, Cleric, Ranger, and Guardian, as well as 3 new advanced elements, Astra, Umbra, and Neos. This is a hugely significant and exciting new chapter to the game, but there's also not an insignificant amount of new mechanics to learn as well. I myself have been obnoxiously asking questions about these mechanics nonstop, so I just wanted to share what I've learned. Feel free to check the timestamps if you want to skip to any keyword in particular. Alright, let's go! Starting with the easy stuff, we now have some cards with champion bonus on them. They'll be written as name of champion, then bonus. It means apply this effect only if your champion, that being your current champion, matches that listed name. For example, this effect has Vanitas bonus, so you gotta be playing a champion called Vanitas. Memory N+, or what I'm calling memory bonus, shows up as memory with a number then plus next to it. It means apply this effect only if there are that number or more cards in your memory zone. Notably, we see in this set that a lot of Cleric cards reward you for having 4 or more cards in memory. Moving on, Gather is an adorable mechanic we've seen on Cleric cards. It reads, to gather, summon a insert list of 6 different herbs token chosen at random, usually meaning that it's decided with a dice roll. Right now there are 6 flavors of herb, each one corresponding to a number that you would get rolling a 6-sided die. On the token cards, there are dice pictures that indicate which herb you would get for each number rolled. Our Asana starter deck will actually come with special dice that have little pictures of each herb on it, which is really fun. More about tokens later when we talk about summon. Now, Brew is how you'll use your gathered herbs to make items such as potions. It says, you may sacrifice the listed objects rather than pay this card's reserve cost. So it's an alternative cost that you can choose to pay to activate a card instead of putting cards down into your memory. And remember that unless it says otherwise, item cards can only be activated at slow speed, so brewing is not a loophole to bring your potions out whenever. One example is Potion of Healing, which simply requires any old 2 herbs. But then you have cards like Condensed Supernova, which calls for a more specific combination of herbs to be brewed. Starcalling is an interesting mechanic that you can unlock with the advanced element Astra, which is currently wielded by our Cleric Arasana. In this example, it says Starcalling 2. As you're looking at this card while glimpsing, you may activate it by paying this cost, as in 2 reserve cost. If you do, put all other cards you're looking at on the bottom of your deck in any order. Just to make it clear, this is an alternative cost that lets you activate cards when you normally wouldn't be able to, and putting the remaining glimpsed cards on the bottom of your deck is part of that cost. Now, I was initially super confused by how the sequencing works, so let's talk it through. This requires a bit of understanding of the effect stack. Say you play Fairy Whispers, which allows you to glimpse 3, then reveal the top card of your deck. If that card is Wind Element, put it into your hand. The way this works is, you would glimpse, or look at 3 cards, and typically glimpsing lets you put any number of those cards in any order on the top or bottom of your deck. Now, if in those 3 cards you see a card with Starcalling, and you satisfy the requirements like being Astra Element, you can choose to activate it right away. What happens first is you pay the Starcalling costs, putting down into your memory the reserve cost required, and putting the remaining glimpsed cards on the bottom of your deck. Now, remember that you're still in the middle of resolving Fairy Whispers, so you have to finish resolving that card first. We haven't jumped to another part of the stack, and there's no opportunity for responses right away. You just say, I've bought the right to play this card, and it goes on the effects stack for later. To finish resolving Fairy Whispers, you finish the glimpse, but in this case there are no cards left to be put back in the deck. Then you reveal the top card of your deck and the whole rest of the effect. Card resolves. Then you go to resolve the next layer of the effect stack, which might be that Starcalled card. We're moving on to Distant. Distant is a state that a unit can be in. It's currently most relevant for the Ranger class, and generally is something that needs to be given to a unit. For example, the card reposition says, target unit becomes distant. Units stay distant until the end of their controller's turn. So if your unit becomes distant during your opponent's turn, it will continue to stay distant through your own turn afterwards, which some units will really want. The ones with the keyword ranged. Some Ranger units have the word ranged with a number next to it, or ranged X if it's not a fixed number. What this means is, as long as this unit is distant, its attacks get plus X power. For example, Windless Arbalist has ranged 2, and if distant would do 2 extra damage when attacking. Note, you don't get that buff when retaliating. There are also cards that can give range to units, like Battlefield Spotter has other units you control gain ranged 1, and instances of ranged will stack, so in this case, Windless Arbalist would now have ranged 3. This mechanic does require the combo of both ranged and distant to pop off. Remember that in order to make a good surprise ranged attack on your enemies, you must snipe from a safe distance. Renewable so far is a keyword found on Ranger Regalia items, specifically bullets. It reads, if this card would be banished from the field or an intent, put it into its owner's material deck instead. First of all, any regalia when used up, destroyed, or sacrificed will go to your banishment zone instead of graveyard, so this is great. In most cases, you should be able to keep cycling it back into your material deck to be reused. Some scenarios, if you shoot the bullet from a gun as part of an attack, that bullet is now considered in the intent zone. So, after it's used up, normally gets banished, boom, renewable. However, a bullet that's loaded into a gun is no longer considered to be on the field. It's just a loaded card of that gun. So if you leave a gun with a renewable bullet loaded in it just lying around on your field and that thing gets destroyed, now because that bullet is technically not being banished from field or intent, that gets around renewable and it would not go back to the material deck. Steadfast is an attribute we've seen on Guardian allies. It reads, this ally can retaliate while rested, and doesn't rest to do so. It's very good. This means that while this ally stays alive, it can retaliate unlimited times. Now you don't have to make a decision on when's the best time to retaliate, because usually it'd just be the one retaliation when you rest that ally, then it's too tired to fight back. Now, the answer is yes. This ally can do this all day. Foster is another keyword we've seen in the Guardian class. It says, at the beginning of your recollection phase, if this ally hasn't been dealt damage since the end of your previous turn, it becomes fostered. Then those cards gain some sort of benefit or ability. For example, Imperial Recruit gets +1 power as long as it's fostered. It's important to note that once a unit becomes fostered, it will stay fostered and can't become fostered again, unless you were to bounce it and make it come back as a new unit, for example with Suppress or Displace. So a fostered Imperial Recruit will permanently have that +1 power. But Forged Light Shield Maiden gets on foster, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. So that effect will only proc when it first becomes fostered. What it is not is this happens every turn it wasn't dealt damage. And even though it says hasn't been dealt damage since the end of your previous turn, this unit does not actually need to have been on the field since that previous turn. For example, if you were to displace it at the end of your opponent's turn, when it returns, it's now considered a fresh new unit, and if it does not take any damage between then and your recollection phase, congrats, it's fostered. A way to remember this mechanic is to think about how to foster something means to take care of something, right? You might even say you want to protect it, guard it. It, of course, works well with the Guardian class playstyle, where level 1 Tenoris will taunt your enemy's attacks away from your allies. Baby is protected, profit. Another note, if your defensive play is something like favorable winds to give your unit extra health, or give bath to heal any damage taken, it will not successfully become fostered because it was still dealt damage at some point. Finally, let's talk about the difference between summon and generate. There's currently no reminder text for summon, but every instance so far has been summon a something token. Tokens can come in many fashions, including items, herbs, weapons, domains, even token allies. When a token is summoned, you put it onto your field. It's now an object, but it is not considered a real card and can only exist on the field. If it were to move to any of the other zones or is sacrificed or destroyed, it simply goes poof and is gone from the game. Now, it's important to note that these tokens do not go into your main deck or material deck. You'll have to bring them separately in a little token collection in whatever form you prefer. The rules do state that you can use any outside game object to represent a token, so you have the freedom to just use dice or whatnot to track the tokens that you have. On the other hand, you have Generate, which says, to generate, add that card from outside of the game. Thankfully, to keep confusion minimal, there is currently only one use case for Generate, and that is Diana Duskstalker's ability to generate a Creeping Torment card. When that happens, you take a copy of Creeping Torment that you must bring separately, not in your main deck or material deck, and now it is a fully functional card in play, which, unlike tokens, can move between zones. Now, because it's as if you just increased the size of your main deck, you do have to make sure your extra copies are sleeved exactly like your other main cards, just in case it ever moves to your hand or memory or deck and has to be indistinguishable. Interestingly, Creeping Torment is also a card that you can just play in your main deck and activate like normal. You can potentially run 4 copies of it in main and then generate to add as many more as you can. And if you try to generate but don't have enough extra copies on you, then it will fail to find that card and not resolve. Unlike tokens, the rules are that you need that actual card, and it cannot be represented with anything else. So the difference is you summon tokens and you generate cards that stay permanently in play. And that is all of the new keywords for ALC. Thank you so much for watching the first video on my new channel. Other places where you can find me, I'm on a podcast called Talk GA where we talk about anything and everything in Grand Archive. And also my main channels where I do singing stuff. That's it for me. Happy alchemical revolutionizing! Bye!